TIFU by letting my dad came home to see vomit everywhere and my girlfriend blackout drunk and naked on the floor. My girlfriend, who my dad has never met until now, and I decided it would be a fun to do a Harry Potter drinking game, except we watch all 8 movies, totaling 20 hours. We were drinking spirits with mixers, the first time I've ever drunk spirits. Holy coconut, you wouldn't believe how many times people say Harry Potter. After just one movie we are half a bottle of vodka and 3/4 a bottle of gin down. Now is probably a good time to mention I'm an absolute lightweight, which is very impressive for a 6'6" male. Naturally we are drunk and decide having butternut is a good idea, so we proceed to do that, then grab a shower. At this point both of us are properly wasted and no longer in control of our actions. Somehow my girlfriend leaves the shower and turns it off, while I stay there, lying down, vomiting into the grate. After an hour I manage to get up, slouch to my room, vomit some more on the carpet, pass my naked girlfriend on the floor, check her pulse, and finally crash out on my bed. I wake up to my dad opening my window. I've slept for 5 hours at this point. He starts pushing me awake. He simply asks if we are on any other drugs, need an ambulance, etc. He then tells me to make sure my girlfriend is still alive. He leaves and says to call him in 10 minutes. I get up to see my naked girlfriend still lying on the floor, and 3 pools of vomit on the carpet. I wake her up, bring her to my room and lie her down on my bed. To calling and saying she is alive, my dad tells me to clean the place up and call him back. The place is now clean and I'm dreading this call. Doctor, me and my girlfriend got blackout drunk at my house, vomited everywhere, and my dad's first time meeting her was seeing her fully naked on his floor surrounded by vomit. Update: a few things to clarify. It isn't my house as I mistakenly put it, it's my dad's house that I live in. He was supposed to be staying at his girlfriend's place that night but forgot his laptop and had to come home for it. I am 17 and so is my girlfriend. Another thing to add, I absolutely understand how irresponsible and stupid this was. A mistake like this will not be made again. I'll also be insisting to pay for the carpets and whole house to be professionally cleaned. Now to give context to my dad's actions so he doesn't just seem like a loose father who doesn't care. This is highly out of the norm for me. In general I am highly trustworthy, responsible and mature. He knows how much I regret this and that I had already learnt the lesson well and truly. Now, to continue the story, I give him a call. He asks how both me and my girlfriend are. He also asks if my girlfriend will be able to make it home to her parents' house, however it's evident that she cannot. The real juicy part of this is that the next day after all the vomiting, me and her are going to visit my mum and cousins for lunch to introduce each other. Luckily my dad does not feel the need to tell my mum, rather telling us to sober up the best we can and get a good sleep. After a decent night's sleep dad comes back over to find us cleaning the house some more. I introduce him to my GF, once again he is the best father I could ask for, remains chill and most importantly unawkward, even making jokes about the whole situation. We start the 1-hour journey to my mum's, mostly feeling okay, just a little tired and in my case a little sick to the stomach. This journey includes a windy bus ride and a ferry. What more could I ask for to relax my stomach? Now the good news is the lunch went very smoothly. Mum was none the wiser, loves my new girlfriend, and the feelings are mutual. Not the best way to meet your kid's partner for the first time, but you definitely have a great father. Thanks, I like him a lot. Well, your father was pretty cool if I must say. He promptly asked the right questions and left as soon as he was sure everything was okay, not treating you as a child. If it were for mine, I would have been made sober up with the force of 1,000 suns. Yeah, no doubt, he was chill on the phone afterwards too. My dad would have handled the situation just as chill. My mom's head would have exploded. I had a similar incident when I was 16 or 17. I had been dating my girlfriend, future wife, now ex-wife, for the last 6 years, so he wasn't stupid and knew she and I would do the naughty when we were left home alone when she spent the night. He oftentimes worked 11 PM to 7 AM, but at the weekends of my visitations off and we do hang out, she'd come over often as well, but occasionally he'd get asked to work, leaving us on our own. One night we got buck wild all over the house, no booze or drugs, just raging teen hormones, and after a few hours and almost every room we passed out, I I was semi-naked and she was buck-naked aside from one sock. All of a sudden I felt some pushing on my shoulder following whispering of my name. I slowly opened my eyes to see my dad standing next to the couch but looking at the wall. He quietly told me that he's gotten off work early but didn't call as he though I'd still be asleep. Then he noticed her and discreetly pointed out my girlfriend who was cuddled next to me was completely naked with no blankets or anything, with everything on full display. He informed me he was going to go to the little diner up the road to get us all done breakfast and suggested I make her more comfortable in my own bed under the blankets. She never knew my dad was there and saw all of her glory or not, and it was never brought up, and my dad never said anything or acted strange around her or anything either. I'm glad he didn't, because she was the kind who'd act strange and avoidance of people/things that was cause for embarrassment, and she loved my dad. So all she knew is we got up and got dressed before my dad got home from work. Bro, or GF could have died from choking on her own vomit. Luckily not, but it's always a possibility if you black out in pretty much any other position than the recovery position. TIFU by squeezing a mango onto my butternut to be sexy. This happened like 3 months ago and I'm finally over the embarrassment enough to talk about it. Fairly short story. I'd like to preface this by saying I was an extremely heavy drinker at the time, which tended to influence my decision making. Now I'm just a regular heavy drinker, so everything is fine. This happened while I was still with my ex. She had an extremely high coconut drive and loved to experiment in bed. I introduced her to Reddit and she immediately started following all these cheesecake subs, looking for positions and etc. for us to try. I'm definitely not as sexually adventurous as she is, and 99% of the time she was the one that would initiate everything. Around the last few days of us dating, she had brought up eating coconut and said she wanted to try it on me. The idea disgusted sober me, but as I was intoxicated 83.7% of the time, I tended to be very why not? About pretty much everything. I initially told her no because it just felt weird to me, but she brought it up a few times and then caught me on a day that I was immensely coconut up and I agreed to try. So, I run down the street to buy another bottle of whiskey for us, mainly me, to drink, and things started to get hot and heavy. Not with the liquor store guy but with my ex. We decided to shower together and she shaved my cheesecake. She accidentally nicked me, which I didn't feel at all at the moment, but she did a great job. Again, normally that'd be very weird for me, but I was hilariously intoxicated. After the shower, we're making our way back to the bedroom to do coconut, and this great idea dawned on me. Why not make it delicious for her and use like whipped cream or something on my butternut? Told her to go warm herself up and I went into her fridge to find something sexy and delicious, but she mostly orders out and only ever buys fruit from the supermarket, so all she had in her fridge was apple juice and a few mangoes. So I grabbed one of the mangoes and peeled it. I think this is also a great time to mention I'm highly allergic to most fruits, and I also have never eaten a mango before. I barely eat fruit. Anyways, since I was still naked, after peeling it I just bent over and squeezed the coconut out of my mango right onto my coconut so all the juices permeated my hole. There was a slight tingle because she had nicked me, but aside from that it felt like a job well done. I go back to the room and things get nasty. About 30 minutes in, she goes to eat my coconut. I don't really remember this part, but she filled me in, but comments that things are looking a bit weird back there. I don't remember my reply, but long story short, she had to get my EpiPen, and because we're not very well informed we assumed you had to inject it into the place that is exhibiting any visible reactions to the allergy. So she injected me in the coconut, but it didn't seem to help. I definitely remember what that felt like. It wasn't fun. The EpiPen didn't really seem to work, and I vaguely remember feeling like I couldn't breathe as well as before. So she called 911 and everything was pretty much fine afterwards. Except our relationship, because we broke up a few days later. So TLDR, I tried to be sexy by squeezing mango onto my coconut and had a bad allergic reaction. Find me on Insta if you'd like to see me being annoying 24/7 at Larry Potter. Edit, for anyone wondering how a grown butternut adult doesn't know how to use an EpiPen when he's supposedly highly allergic to something. I've never used it on myself before and didn't get one until way later in life. Also, I'm a drunk idiot and probably would have cheesecaked that up even if I were reading the instructions. I understand understand how unbelievable it all seems, and honestly I wish it was all fake, because then I'd probably still have a girlfriend, but alas, with my lonely coconut. Edit 2, yes, I have a drinking problem. I'm working on it. Edit 3, although my ex had a habit of pressuring me to do a lot of sexual things, I always said yes. So please don't imply I was raped or assaulted or something. I was uncomfortable, but she never forced me to do anything. I do appreciate the PMs of people offering their support, though it's not necessary. I'm honestly just impressed you managed to peel a mango while drunk without losing a finger. I'm very good at things I shouldn't be doing drunk while drunk. One allergic reaction was enough for her to let her mango. I'm kindly asking you to leave. I'm giving you an A+ for effort at least. Thank you. My coconut would get a D+. It takes two to tango, but don't mess with the mango. Deadass zucchini mangoes. They never did anything good for anyone, tbh. I tried to be sexy by squeezing mango onto my banana. For anyone wondering, this part was enough of a cheesecake up without the allergic reaction. 15 ways to not pleasure your lover. TIFU by ignoring my resting heart rate of 140 BPM. Obligatory. This happened a few months ago. I am 26, This incident occurred in July of this year and resulted in me being hospitalized for 3 days. Background: in mid-June I started a new job for the civil service, UK, after giving up on a teacher training course a few weeks prior to being offered the job. However, the warning signs for what was about to happen started whilst I was doing my teacher training from August/September 2018 onwards. Shortly after starting my teacher training, I became acutely aware that my heart was beating faster and harder than usual, even when I was completely sedentary or relaxed. This was particularly noticeable at night when I was trying to sleep, as I'd often be preoccupied with thinking about how fast it was beating, and this would lead to me being unable to fall asleep. Around this time it was holding steady at about 100 BPM. I'd frequently measure it just out of curiosity, but then I'd forget about it for a few days until I was having one of those nights where I was struggling to sleep. Generally notice my heart rate but only be slightly baffled at how fast it was beating. I didn't think anything of it and put it down to just being generally unfit. For reference, I play football once a week and typically walk for about 40 minutes a day, so, although I wasn't doing an ideal amount of exercise, I thought my level of exercise was adequate. I put my fast heart rate down to my lifestyle, the fact that I don't eat particularly healthily, and I also smoke and drink every other weekend. Fast forward a few months and the sleepless nights had really started to take its toll. I had missed 20 days of teacher training through sickness absence and was on the verge of being thrown off the course. This is around March/April 2019, and I still hadn't taken any measures to investigate my fast heart rate. In fact, by this point it had become a running joke in my friend group to ask how's the resting heart, or my heart rate whilst sprinting is essentially your resting heart rate, etc. Being quite a self-deprecating person, I was quite happy to go along with the joking, although internally I was now really starting to worry. In May 2019 I got offered a job I had applied for 12 months prior. I was on a waiting list. I took the opportunity to GTFO of teacher training, which I despised, and took the job at the civil service. This is when things really started to become concerning. About 4 weeks into my new job I started to feel nauseous on most days. I had also recently purchased a set of scales and noticed that over 12 months I had dropped from 11 st 5 pounds to 8 st 11 pounds without any change in lifestyle. By now my resting heart rate was 120-140 BPM at rest, no matter what. On maybe 2 or 3 days every week, whilst walking to work, I'd find myself feeling incredibly sick, and sometimes I would stop off to be sick before heading into the office, or being sick in the toilets at work. Eventually, I had a few days sickness absence off work and took the opportunity to visit my GP. I had actually gone to see the GP because of a bout of insomnia, not about my heart, but he measured my heart rate and blood pressure just as standard procedure. My GP, visibly in shock, asks me how long my heart rate had been so high at rest. I said, oh, about a year, but I'm very unfit, you see. He immediately suggests I can either book to come back next week for a heart scan or go straight to A&E and have a heart scan there, and he will call ahead. Followed my usual lifelong rule of no news is good news and said I'll have the scan next week, at which point he insisted I go to A&E right now. I take his advice. I arrive at A&E and explain that my GP should have rang ahead. He hadn't, so I went to sit down fully prepared to wait 3 to 4 hours to be seen by anyone. To my amazement, before I had even sat down, a nurse called me through to the triage area where she hooked me up to a heart monitor. My heart was now at 180 BPM. I get sent to resus and given an 4 with a solution intended to reduce my heart rate. It did nothing. At this point I was told that I wouldn't be able to leave the hospital until they had worked out what the problem was, so a nurse took my blood and the tests were carried out. By this point it was around 9 PM, so I was moved onto a ward, hooked back up to an 4, and by 11 PM I was asleep. In the morning a doctor approached me and interviewed me. One question that resonated with me was, do you have any difficulty swallowing? Up until that point it hadn't ever crossed my mind that yes, I do have difficulty swallowing. WTF? After concluding his questioning and looking at my blood tests, he explained that I had hyperthyroidism and that the level of thyroxine in my body was over 1,000 times the normal level, meaning my metabolism was in overdrive and my heart too. The enlarged thyroid gland itself was the cause behind the difficulty swallowing. They keep me in for another night and eventually my heart dips below 100 BPM for the first time in months. I get prescribed a cocktail of medication which I have to take for the foreseeable future, carbimazole and propranolol for those interested, and then they let me go home. I look up the symptoms for an overactive thyroid and I tick pretty much all of them and think, you complete and utter moron. How could I have missed this? Why did I leave it so long before going to a GP, you coward, etc etc. It was at this point my mum decided to tell me, oh yeah, that makes sense. It runs in the family, we all have it. Cheers for the heads up, mum. The present day, as I write this, I'm back up to 11 st 7 pounds and my heart is steady at 50 to 70 BPM. I'm reducing my medication steadily and gradually. I forgot what it actually feels like to feel well. Edit / for those curious as to why I didn't visit my GP sooner. The 20 days of sickness I had during my teacher training weren't all in one go. There were 2 to 3 days here and there over the course of 6 months or so. I had, in fact, visited the doctors during these absences, more than once. I'd also mentioned my heart rate, but at the time I was told simply to keep an eye on it. Because I was ignorant of the other symptoms, I did not mention them, meaning it would have been incredibly difficult for them to diagnose what was wrong. My doctor's lack of concern, based on my incomplete information, was reassuring, and my internal monologue convinced me he's the expert, he isn't worried, and who am I to question him? So in subsequent visits I would only mention it briefly. Flawed logic, of course. Extra detail: when I refer to my GP it can be any number of doctors unless you request the same person specifically, which I never did. The doctor who eventually sent me to A&E was fairly new to the practice and, after reading through all my notes after taking my blood pressure and heart rate, and after me saying it had been about a year, decided the trend had gone on too long. Also / apologies for imperial units. 11 st 7 pounds is roughly 74 kg, / 163 pounds, and I am 5 feet 8 inches, / 176 centimeters. TL Doctor, I let my hypothyroidism go untreated for so long that I ended up being hospitalized for 3 days and ended up being put on lifelong medication. How many other people checked their heart rate while reading this? I downloaded an app, I got 91 frown. I think that's pretty high, isn't it? I might have just been anxious about ops post to lol. So glad you caught it in time. My girlfriend had hypothyroidism for about 6 to 8 months before she found out. I kept telling her I thought something was wrong. She was always tired, hungry, irritable and very weak. Every week to every month I would argue with her to go to the doctor, to which she never did. The breaking point for me was when she squatted all the way down and was too weak to stand back up without assistance. She still made excuses for it, but I put my foot down that day. Glad to hear you got the help you needed. OP, I'm not fit, I only walk 40 minutes a day, and play sports once a week. Me sitting here feeling attacked, smiley face. Same, my resting heart rate was 120, I'm actually usually in the 40s. The weight loss was great, but the palpitations and tremors were not. Thyroid storm is no joke. I'm not sure about that, but I've had countless blood tests. I'm required to have them on a monthly basis so they can monitor the effectiveness of the medication I am on. As it stands, things are heading in the right direction. Smile. Glad you finally went in. Untreated hypothyroidism can lead to heart failure. It can also mask kidney disease. Please don't wait so long to see your go in future. You have people in your life that you are important to.